When my parents left for their anniversary, my babysitter asked, "Where's your punishment room?" "We don't have a punishment room?" I laughed nervously. "Then we'll make one." Miss Vicky started dragging the chair from my desk toward the hallway closet. "I'm 13. I don't need time out." I pulled out my phone to text my parents, but she snatched it from my hand. No devices during accountability training. I immediately went to the house phone and called Mom. "This babysitter just mentioned a punishment room and took my phone." "Miss Vicky is in charge, sweetie. Do exactly what she says." Mom's voice was oddly flat. "But Mom, this is for your own good. We'll see you Monday." Dad's voice came through in the background. "Tell him we love him, but this needs to happen." They hung up, and before I had time to process, Miss Vicky had finished setting up the closet with just a wooden chair inside. Reflection begins now. 1 hour. For what? I didn't do anything. After what you did last Tuesday, your parents want immediate correction. She checked her watch. 59 minutes now. I sat in that dark closet, confused and angry, thinking about last Tuesday. I literally just went to school, came home, played Xbox. When the hour ended, she opened the door. "Dinner is what you've earned." She placed a bowl of plain white rice and a glass of water on the table. "This is insane. My parents would never—" "Shut up!" she screamed before throwing my glass against the wall. That evening, she made me handwrite a 500-word essay on respecting others' property. While I wrote, my phone buzzed from where she'd locked it in her bag. She checked it, and her face got stern. "Your friend Marco is texting. He says, 'Did your dad find out about the Xbox thing?'" I had no idea what he was talking about. The next day, I woke up at 6 a.m. to the babysitter pulling off my blanket. Labor builds character. "You'll deep clean this entire house today." "Yeah, no, I'm not your maid. I'm calling child services." I rolled back over and pulled my pillow over my head. "This is completely legal. You can clean voluntarily, or I can stand here with an industrial bottle of bleach for 8 hours until you do." As I scrubbed the kitchen floor with a toothbrush, she took photos. "Your parents want documentation of accountability." She aimed her phone at me like I was some kind of criminal. I stopped trusting her after that. That afternoon, silent reflection. No speaking from 2 to 6 p.m. I sat there in silence while she read a book, occasionally looking up to make sure I hadn't moved. When I shifted positions, she'd snap, start over. 4 more hours. My sister texted, and Miss Vicky read it aloud. "Tell him I'm sorry, but he shouldn't have used Dad's card for Xbox stuff." I never used Dad's card. I had my own debit card from birthday money. That evening, she made me watch a documentary about juvenile detention centers. Kids my age in orange jumpsuits talking about ruining their lives with one bad decision. "This could be your future if you don't learn now," she said during a scene about a kid who stole from his parents. "Your cellmate won't care that your ass is crying for mommy." "I didn't steal anything." "Denial is expected. Your father found the charges Tuesday night." She pulled out her phone and laughed while she recorded me crying. "Your parents want to see what guilt looks like." But my parents still cut the crusts off my sandwiches and let me stay up as late as I wanted. Something wasn't adding up. The next morning, she woke me up at 5 a.m. by dumping a cup of ice water on my face. She took my mattress, dragging it to the garage. "Thieves in prison sleep on concrete. Consider this practice." Made me ask permission for bathroom breaks. 3 minutes maximum. Supervised. My best friend Reese managed to sneak a call through the landline. "Dude, Marco is freaking out. He said his mom wants to talk to your parents about paying them back." Beep. Miss Vicky unplugged the phone from the wall. That's another night on the floor. That afternoon, she pulled out printed pages, bank statements with highlighted charges, 5 different charges of $99.99 each to Xbox Live. "Still denying it?" She pointed at the timestamps. 3:47 p.m. You were home from school. On Sunday morning, my sister called on Miss Vicky's phone. The babysitter finally let me talk but kept it on speaker. "Just confess already," my sister said. "They know everything." "What do they know? I didn't do anything." My sister sighed. "Marco's mom showed them the Discord messages, idiot." "What Discord messages?" "The ones where you taught Marco how to use Dad's credit card info for Xbox purchases without getting caught. Where you literally wrote, 'Keep it under $100 each time so it doesn't flag the bank.' And, 'My dad never checks his statements anyway.'" Everything clicked. I had told Marco all that. I'd done it myself 3 times before and never got caught. But Marco was supposed to delete those messages. Miss Vicky took the phone back. "Your parents arrive in 2 hours. I recommend you prepare your confession." When my parents walked in, they looked exhausted. "Forget the money," Dad said. "We knew about that months ago. We were testing you." Mom nodded. "To see if you'd blame Marco. If you'd throw him under the bus to save yourself." I failed every test. "So here's what happens now," Dad continued, pulling out plane tickets. "Military school in Montana. Tonight." But Miss Vicky interrupted. "Actually, there's been a change of plans." She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick blue folder with typed pages sticking out the edges. My parents stopped moving toward the door while she flipped through the papers inside. She held up a page covered in bullet points and started explaining her 3-week intensive program. Mom's eyes moved across the paper as Miss Vicky pointed at different sections. The words coming out of her mouth sounded like stuff from a business meeting. She kept saying things about accountability modules and behavioral restructuring phases. My mom asked what exactly these modules involved, and Miss Vicky started listing off activities. Dad crossed his arms, and his face showed he wasn't buying any of this. Mom grabbed his arm and reminded him about Uncle Jeremy, who started with small thefts. She told him how Jeremy ended up in prison for 10 years after things got worse. Dad's shoulders dropped, and suddenly both my parents were nodding along. Miss Vicky closed the folder and told them they needed to leave for the next 48 hours. She said parents being around would undermine the process and suggested they get a hotel. My mom actually walked to their bedroom and came back with an overnight bag. Dad grabbed his keys from the counter and started checking his wallet for cash. I stood there watching them pack like they were going on vacation while leaving me with this crazy woman. My legs felt frozen to the floor as they zipped up their bags. Dad pulled me aside near the front door while Mom loaded the car. His hand squeezed my shoulder hard enough to hurt a little bit. He told me this was my absolute last chance before Montana Military School. His eyes looked sad but also tired and done with everything. I could tell he was choosing to believe this stranger instead of his own kid. Mom came back inside and hugged me quick before heading back out. They climbed into the car and backed down our driveway while I watched from the window. The second their car turned the corner, Miss Vicky walked to the front door. She turned the deadbolt and dropped the key into her pocket. She told me we were starting with a recorded confession right now. She said she'd send it to Marco's mom and my school principal tonight. I took a deep breath and told her I'd confess to what I actually did. I explained I taught Marco the credit card trick but wouldn't lie about charges I didn't make. She pulled out her phone and set it up on the coffee table. She hit record and pointed at me to start talking. I said my name and admitted to teaching Marco how to use my dad's card. I explained I did it 3 times myself for $300 total. She stopped recording and shook her head like I'd failed a test. She told me to include all 5 charges or we'd keep doing this. I refused, and she started recording again with the same result. On the 3rd take, I still wouldn't lie about the extra $200. She grabbed my arm and started dragging me down the hallway. Her grip was strong enough to leave marks on my skin. She yanked open the closet door and I saw she'd put a bucket in the corner. The wooden chair from earlier was still there against the back wall. She shoved me inside and told me this was where I'd sleep tonight. She said I was choosing defiance over growth and slammed the door shut. The darkness wrapped around me like a thick blanket I couldn't push off. Hours passed with me sitting on that hard floor trying not to think about the bucket. My back hurt from leaning against the wall and my legs kept falling asleep. Around midnight, I heard soft footsteps coming down the stairs. My sister's voice whispered through the crack under the door asking if I was okay. She sounded scared and her voice shook when she talked. She admitted she knew some charges happened when I was already grounded upstairs. She said she was scared of what Miss Vicky might do to her if she spoke up. I told her to go back to bed before Miss Vicky caught her down here. Her footsteps disappeared back up the stairs, and I was alone again. I spent the rest of the night going over every Xbox purchase in my head. I remembered the exact dates and times of my 3 thefts clearly. The first was in January for $99.99 at 4:30 after school. The second was in February on a Saturday morning for the same amount. The third was in March during spring break for another $99.99. But the bank statements showed 2 more charges after I was grounded. One happened on a Saturday when I was locked in my room all day. The other happened on a Tuesday when Miss Vicky had already taken my phone. The dates and times proved I couldn't have made those purchases myself. I held on to these facts like they were the only things keeping me sane. At exactly 5 in the morning, the closet door flew open. Miss Vicky stood there with a toothbrush in one hand and her phone in the other. She announced we were starting Module 1, which she called Physical Accountability. She handed me the toothbrush and pointed down the hallway toward the living room. She told me I was scrubbing every single baseboard in the entire house. She said she'd be filming my progress to show my parents later tonight. I scrubbed those baseboards for 2 hours straight while she recorded every single minute on her phone. My knees hurt so bad from crawling along the floor, and my hands were getting raw from the cleaning chemicals. When I reached her bag near the couch, I had to move it to clean behind, and that's when I saw it. A business card fell out that said, Tough Love Solutions, LLC, with some basic website address printed below in cheap-looking font. The whole thing looked like something you'd make at home on a computer and print at the library. I memorized every detail of that card before shoving it back in her bag and kept scrubbing like I never saw anything. Around noon, she finally let me take a water break, and I gulped down 3 glasses while standing at the kitchen sink. My brain was racing with thoughts about what I actually did versus what she was trying to make me confess to. I grabbed a pencil and paper towel from the counter and quickly wrote down the truth while she was checking her phone. 3 times I used Dad's credit card for Xbox stuff. January 15th for $99.99. February 10th for the same amount. March 23rd for another $99.99. $300 total that I stole. I folded that paper towel super small and shoved it in my pocket. Then later, when I went to the bathroom, I hid it under my mattress that was still on the floor from when she dragged it off. Monday morning came and I started getting ready for school, but Miss Vicky blocked my bedroom door. She announced we weren't going anywhere because we had intensive modules to complete for my accountability training. I watched her pick up the house phone and dial my school's number while doing this fake concerned mom voice. She told them I was having a family emergency and wouldn't be in for a few days. The secretary asked if everything was okay, and Miss Vicky made up some story about a sick grandparent while I stood there wanting to scream that she was lying. After she hung up, she dragged me to the living room corner and handed me our biggest dictionary and encyclopedia from the bookshelf. She told me to hold them above my head with straight arms while she sat on the couch reading from her phone. She started reading these testimonials